So for our first offering, what we were doing is we were putting together a list, and we were going to do this on a weekly basis. It'll be every Thursday, 8 p.m. On this page. And just with the coronavirus and the unrest that's going on right now, we wanted to use our reach, and we wanted to kind of use the resources that we have to provide not only just a voice of influence for you every week, but also to kind of give you some tangible things to walk away with. So each week we're going to be bringing different subject matter experts on, whatever your industry is, or just, wherever you are in life. We're going to provide some music, we're going to provide some comedy, we're going to provide some political figures. So you'll always be entertained to some manner. But we felt that, we'd be remiss with all of the things that are going on in the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as just, the state of our nation, not to bring someone on that can provide some great guidance and leadership in times like these, and also kind of provide some insight about what's going on, and, how we as a community, and specifically people of color, can, really go inward to manifest outward, if that makes sense. I really look at, this place right now of God having to make us sit down, number one, with Corona, but then in sitting down, how are we going to arise from, just the different things that are going on, not only outside of our door, but when all of the dust settles, do we have a plan in place? Do we have the things that we need? Have we identified the resources that are going to make us capable to elevate and make sure that we are doing, number one, our individual piece, number two, our community piece, but always it's rooted in God. So I had to think who would be able to speak towards all of that, see? And we sat down and we thought about it, and it's none other than our good friend Lee May, Pastor Lee May. Just kind of give you an intro of how I know him. Of course, that's my line brother. That's my frat brother. We met at Clark, Atlanta in '93. He's gone on to not only be the youngest commissioner in DeKalb County, then he was the interim CEO of DeKalb County, and then now he is the pastor of Transforming Faith Church. And before that, he was a business owner in DeKalb with a movie theater. And so that's not all, because I'm going to let C tell you how he knows him, and that just tells you just how God puts different people in our lives and how our paths cross.
Yeah. So I met Lee May at New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, where he was an elder, and then at the same time, me and Chris had known each other, but didn't know he knew Lee, and then Chris and I started doing the shows together, and Lee comes into the conversation like, oh, Lee May, da, da, da. So, all of that happens. But then also Lee May and I both, I'm a pastor, Lee's a pastor, and we were talking about planting, transforming faith in DeKalb County. And so I ended up becoming a pastor at Blueprint Church, but still I was part of the conversations when it's all jumped off. So, yeah, so I've known Lee for, quite a while now. And so,
yeah, so we're excited. Again, tag this, like this, share this, repost this. We're going to have an in-depth conversation about, 30 to 45 minutes. We're not going to take your whole night up, but we want to make sure that we pack it full of just great information. And hey, I'm just being, as a learner, I got my notepad too, because
take notes.
I want to, take notes. If you have your smartphone, take some screenshots, whatever you got to do. So without further ado, I'm going to bring the man of the hour in, and we are about to put the Holla spotlight on Pastor Lee May. Welcome, Lee May, to the Holla spotlight. Lee, come on in and join us. Come on in, brother. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm good. How are you, brother?
Oh man, I'm blessed and highly favored, as the
blessed and highly favored. Good stuff, man. Good stuff, brother.
Black church. That is Black church.
Look at you. Look at you.
And I tell the audience, Lee knows where all the bodies are buried.
All of them.
And he has watched my growth, man. And I'll be honest, man, I probably would have strayed a lot further Had you not been by my side, brother, arm in arm as, not only a brother, just, not only fraternity, but just as a black man in Clark, Atlanta, but also, you always kept our North Star compass, and you always reminded of Jesus, even during those dark days. I'm like, Jesus could see you. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
So
But
I appreciate you, brother.
They say word on the street is that both of y'all might not have made it if it wasn't for Robin, though.
Well, now that's true, brother. That is true. That is, and I know she watching that. She said,
Right.
You're right.
Yep. Single-handedly, Robin was like what do you call those? The den mothers. She was the den mother for us. So we appreciate you, Robin. We love you. So let's get into it, brother. Thank you for doing this first Holla Spotlight. If the audience doesn't know, this is our first offering, and we just really appreciate that. With all of your things that you have going on and your busy schedule, that you carve this time out to really sit down and not only engage with us, but also provide some of the wisdom through your journey and your experiences. So let's just get into it. Just kind of give the people a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and why that makes you qualified to really have this great conversation.
Well, wow, that last part kind of threw me off, because I don't know that I'm qualified to have this conversation. I'm gonna do my best, to have this conversation. But first, let me thank you, Corwin and Chris, man, for even thinking about me to invite me on at any time, let alone the very first time that you all do the spotlight. It really does mean a lot to me, and I listened to both of y'all's intro of me, man, and it really does mean a lot. Chris knows. I know where his bodies are. He knows where all my bodies are as well. So we'll be forever linked and forever friends, like literally. And Corwin, as you were talking, man, I was like, he don't really know that I was praying that he would come over and be a part of Transforming Faith Church. When we were talking before we ever launched, just talking through the idea, man, of starting a church. And I didn't have a clue. I've started stuff, and we'll talk about that. I've started a lot of stuff, in my life, but starting a church, man, was probably the most nerve-wracking and nervous thing that I had to do in terms of an organization or creating something. So, I do find it an honor that y'all had me here. And I gotta say one thing, Chris, you're talking about, you've been doing this for 20 years now, bro. Mm-hmm. I like to think that I had a part to do with that. Right. I'm serious, man. And you may not remember this, but we were roommates when you started doing this. Mm-hmm. And you were working at GE, I believe, at the time. Yeah. And we were emailing back and forth, y'all, Corwin, and Chris and I got this thing. We've been doing this since we were 17 and 18. Like, I always tell them, man, you better do something, because I'm killing the game, right? I'm killing the game. And he's like, boy, you better do something, because I'm getting it. And so this was like 20 plus years ago, man. We were emailing poem. I don't know what it was. We thought we were poets and all that, and we just playing. And Chris penned this poem, "I'm So Pretty." You remember that, Chris?
I do.
I'm so pretty. I don't know if that was your first one, but it was so good. We just dropped the mic. Was like, oh, game's over. Like,
like he done got serious.
Right, he's serious. Like, we're playing games now, and you getting all you trying to make money off this thing now, right? So anyway, man, it's truly an honor, both of y'all, man, to have you here. And God just knows how to, we think God don't know what he's doing, and we're trying to wonder all the time. God has a plan navigating our lives, and really that's the story of my life, y'all. I mean, from the moment I got here at Clark Atlanta University in 1993, again, literally, Chris was the first person I met on campus. He lived across the hall from me. My brother Jay, who dwarfs both of us, met him first. My brother's 6'3", 275 now, and he was like 9 years old then. So. But God navigates our life, man, and that's really been the testament of my life, man. I came down here, I was a business major, and I'm a preacher's kid. So, like most preacher's kids, well, you got one or two preacher's kids. You got one that runs towards their parents, vocation, and then you got the ones like me that ran as far away as possible from that vocation. And I was the one running. I was like, I'm out. Nope, I'm not doing this. I'm not participating. And so I said, well, let's see what major would be the furthest away from being a preacher as possible. I was like, I'm a major in business. You can't get no further away from politics. I mean, from preaching than in business. So I majored in business, a marketing concentration. That's always been my passion. It's like an entrepreneur even in high school, y'all. In my yearbook picture, I got a strap over my shoulder, and I had candy in that pouch. Yeah, I was a candy man. I sold candy, and I got so good, I couldn't sell enough on my own, so I had to bring some salespeople in, and we distributed. Look, I was, because mom and dad wouldn't let me get a part-time job. So entrepreneurship has always been kind of in my blood. So graduated from Clark in 1998, business major, and worked. My first job was working for Nestle USA as a sales rep.
Wow.
So I sold candy in high school. I sold candy as my first job. And I didn't stay there that long because I actually went back to school. So as much as I was trying to run away from preaching, I actually went to seminary in 2000. So I graduated in 98, went to seminary at Emory University, Chandler School of Theology, but didn't want to preach. Crazy, right? Didn't want to preach, didn't want to pastor. So that was 2000, graduated in 2003. And then I graduated from seminary with a Master of Divinity degree, and I opened up a movie theater.
Right.
Right. Like that makes sense, right?
Still
running. Still running. Like, okay, I put my toe in, but I'm good. And I was married, at the time. Well, still married, Robin Monique May. She was Simpson when we first met. But we started a movie theater in Lithonia off of Panola Road and Covington Highway. Corwin, you from DeKalb, so that probably was the spot back in the day.
I went there many times. I went there when you opened it.
I know you did. Yeah. So we opened it, and at the time, man, we were the youngest movie theater owners in the country. And we were only one of 3 Black-owned movie theaters, in the country. And, we trucked it. We did it as long as we could for about 5 years. And then 2008, 2009 hit, the Great Recession, and we recessed our way up on out of that. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, y'all. Met so many people. I like to tell, like Will Packer is a friend of ours. He's a frat brother of me and Chris. But back in the day, before he got all these big movies and everything, he was struggling trying to get his stuff in theaters. And he would send us over his stuff, on a CD. Like, can you play this, bro?
Wow.
You know what I mean? And we'll play it, and it didn't even matter if 5 people came and watched it. It didn't matter. He was able to show that, that he was putting it in theaters. And then look at the dude now, So,
wow,
just being able to interact with so many people. And then somehow, man, I jumped into the world of politics, and people ask me, how did I, jump into it? Well, a friend of mine, his name is Eric Burton. Eric Burton's a good friend of mine. Met him at New Birth, actually, back in the day. Yeah. He's a FAMU graduate as well. It's like Clark Atlanta and FAMU. I don't know what it is. But one day he called me while I was at my office with the theater and was like, hey, man, the current commissioner, who's your commissioner, is resigning to run for Congress. That was Hank Johnson at the time. He was a commissioner. And that seat's going to be open. So I cut a deal with him. I said, look, dude, if I'll consider it if you tell me what a commissioner does, because I didn't even know what a commissioner did. And I was like, I don't even know. I know what like a mayor does or a governor. I don't know what a county commissioner does. So I kind of researched it and thought it would be a good idea because I've always been engaged in watching government and knowing what was going on. I've always voted, of course, and ran for office, man, and won in 2006. I was the youngest commissioner in the history of the county. In 2022, the county be 200 years, and ain't nobody been younger than Lee May.
Watch that do the Denzel pound off. King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
King Kong ain't got nothing on me. So, man, you know, so yeah, man, jumped in the world of politics. And in 2013, the governor appointed me to be the interim CEO, and actually was in that role for about 3.5 years. Had to make a decision, and I'll quit on kind of my story. Had to make a decision on if I was going to run for the actual seat. Now, every election that I've ever run in when I was in office, literally, I would sit down and, you know, I would pray, because I always felt like that was ministry for me. That was, again, me running for ministry. I went from business to politics. How much further away from pastoring can you get, right?
Right.
And so I always sat down and prayed, said, God, what do you want me to do? And I always had one of three choices. Choice number one, run for the same position, run for re-election. Choice number two, run for something higher. And choice number three, get out the game, period. Right? And nobody in politics ever thought that I was serious about that third option, but I've always been serious about it. And honestly, it wasn't to get out the game for getting out the game's sake. It was, what does God have for me next? And as I was praying that, I felt very strongly that God was calling me to pastor, which I was like, well, okay, God, thank you. Like, you know, all right, I'm going to do what you want me to do, but, you know, I wasn't the happiest about that, because I spent like 20 years trying to do everything I could but that. And so, yeah, made the decision not to run for office. And in 2017, launched Transforming Faith Church. We've been worshiping up until this pandemic. We had been worshiping in your alma mater, Corwin. Southwest DeKalb High School, SWD, in the building. So we've been there about a little over 2.5 years. And well, of course, we've been worshiping virtually since then. The name of our church, again, is Transforming Faith Church. And it's really descriptive of who we feel like we're called to be. We're called to be transformers. That's what we call our members. And we believe that we're called to transform things and people from where they are to where God has called for them to be. So that's our community, that's the lives of people, and that's people's relationship with Christ. So that's my life in a nutshell, man. And I'm eager to really dive in a little bit more, y'all.
Well, thank you for that, man. And I think that because of just the breadth of knowledge and experiences and how you have been able to kind of move seamlessly in between those worlds makes you more than qualified for this conversation, because, you know, when Corwin and I sat down last week, we just kind of sat down and say, okay, let's do a test pilot to see how this thing is going to run, how we're going to interview different people, what it looks like, what we want to get out the experience. And it kind of quickly turned, I think, as God turned the conversation of, you know, how are we going to make sure that we're taking care of our people? One thing that I'm very proud of Holla for is we have always been unapologetic, not only in our faith walk, but doing church different, doing how you view God and how you worship God different. We have always been on the cutting edge with the Holla show of being clear and clean comedy, but we're not gospel preachy comedy. We do not want the gimmick, the shtick of, don't you hate when you sit in church and the church lady hat too big, you can't see around it? Woohoo! We be like, come on, man, boo, you suck. But the thing is, you can't boo them because it's church, right? So we want to create something where, again, people could experience Christ in a different manner, where you can still have the old school cuts and you can do the jams and you can, you know, meet and fellowship and have that great time, but not feel the pressure of someone like shoveling God and Jesus in your face. It's just his presence alone provides that environment for you. And so because of that, we have that obligation where now with our people, we really have said, okay, how do we continue to nurture our people? How do we continue to feed our people? And again, not give them these cliche, just hold on, just keep the faith, just keep praying and everything gonna work. And I'm like, why are you talking in the slave voice? Right? So we want to give people just like some principle things that they can walk away, feel good about, and apply, and still be within, again, the founding principles of just the goodness of God. So
Yeah.
with that being said, man, we want to open this thing off by just kind of getting your take on what you see now and your perception of what is going on with the shift and the change in our city.
Yeah, man. Right now, I mean, we see what's going on around the country. And of course, we see it right here in Atlanta with, people just, being fed up, and tired of suffering, tired of dealing with unfair practices, tired of dealing with discrimination, tired of dealing with um, a criminal justice system that looks at you less of a person and more as property steal,
Mm.
you know, and just fed up with the unjust nature of so many things in our society or whatever. So you see these, and I love seeing it. You see these young folk just going out, just wilding out, just passion unbridled, and I love the passion. I love the energy, and by no means do I want to kind of damper that down or whatever. But what I see is there needs to be a bridging of the generations, really, to take that passion, that energy, that fire, right? Literally and figuratively, right? That I ain't scared kind of, thing. And then taking some wisdom and gelling the two together to work together for a common good, right? And this is not wisdom coming in by saying, all right, young buck, you've done enough, come do what I say. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Because if the wisdom of that older generation had fully worked out, we still wouldn't be in the situation that we're in, right?
Right.
And so clearly these young folk are with this, unbridled passion, this like, I'm gonna go get it. I don't necessarily have a target in mind. I'm just gonna go and wreck shop until somebody say uncle, and so really I see, for our people, man, we have to really be intentional about coming together, number one, talking, communicating, as best as we can, even with the different generations and having the way that they talk, the cadence in which they talk, the method in which they talk. But we got to come together, we got to talk, and then we have to plan, we have to plan together and then activate. So, for example, you look at the civil rights movement, right? We're in Atlanta, so we have, all of us have had an opportunity to sit down with some civil rights legends, right? Like that, people that we studied in the history books kind of people, and learn from them. I mean, even my entry into politics, one of the first people that endorsed me, literally, because I was young, I was 20 something, right? When I ran, and nobody wanted this young dude to run. One of the first people that said, Lee, you go and you run was Reverend Lowry. Joseph Lowry, matter of fact, at our ribbon cutting for the theater, he was there,
right?
Rubbing on my wife's back like, hey, pretty woman, just. I was like, you 80 something, so you could do.
Right.
But let me tell you what we learned from them. If you watch them, man, they would go protest, they would go boycott, they would go shut stuff down or whatever. But they did it. They protested with a purpose. Right. And so, first of all, in their protest, they were disciplined. They would practice their protests. They would practice people coming up and spitting in their face or hitting them in their hands or, hitting them in their chest, whatever, because they needed to make sure that discipline was in place, not to respond, number one. But then number two, man, they had a strategy. They had a plan behind them as well. So as they are marching, man, as they are shutting down stuff, as they are boycotting and all of that, they're also over there writing legislation.
Right.
So as they're marching on Washington, as they're shutting down stuff in Montgomery and Selma and doing all that, man, they're penning legislation, and that's how we got the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, because they have put so much pressure through their boycott, through putting a face, to what was going on, that the elected officials were forced to make a change, even when they didn't want to, right? So let me give you a good example, even though there wasn't a strategy, well, at least that I could see, but the passion, and this is why protests need to continue. We all are very clear what happened in Minneapolis, right?
Right.
One day the district attorney says, well, we're still investigating, and there's also some evidence that may say that they may not be guilty of what you say that they are, right? What happens that night or soon thereafter? They burn the police precinct down.
Right.
I'm not advocating that at all. So let me tell everybody now. I'm not advocating.
Clear that up, Pastor.
I'm not advocating that. That was criminal. And if you get caught doing that, you deserve to go to jail. That's a crime, right? And that's why I'm trying to, it's hard to compare the two, but the protest itself, I still think they could have gotten where they could have gotten without the crime against the properties and all that. But the next day, the district attorney charges the first officer, and the media asked him, well, what happened? What changed between yesterday and today? And he slipped up a little bit. Then he pulled it back. He said, well, I'm not insensitive to our environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, what he was saying is they burned down our police precinct.
He was like, they serious. He's like, they serious.
Right. Now, we can show that we're serious, differently than burning down stuff and vandalizing property. But my point is, we got to continue that. And I don't even know if that's the direction that you wanted to go to, but we have to be intentional. We got to be able to protest, but we have to also plan our strategy. What's our next move?
Yeah. So question to that, Lee, because I think I think me and Chris might have talked about this, but one thing that you had back in civil rights, that you had leaders. You had very vocal leaders. You had leaders that were orators, and they were smart. They planned and all of that. And now we have people who have the desire, but it doesn't seem like we don't have the leaders. Can we still get accomplished what we want to get accomplished, and we don't seem to have the leaders?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think it's a fair point. I would say we have the leaders. I do believe we have the leaders. We have some of the smartest people. We've all three of us have had the opportunity to meet some brilliant people with creative, strategic minds, leaders that can lead, right? My wife was on a call this morning with Coca-Cola, and they were dealing with all of this or whatever. And they had a couple of brothers on there who were dynamic. So my wife was facilitating it. May have been like 1,000 people on the webinar, right? It was amazing. But you had two brothers that were killing the game. I mean, just had everybody kind of captivated. The president of the Georgia's NAACP, Brother Woodall, James Woodall, and then Mawali Davis, who was an attorney here in DeKalb, actually. And when I tell you, y'all, they killed it. And between my wife kind of, conducting it and everything, it was just an amazing thing. And I'm sitting back like, these brothers are brilliant. Mm-hmm. My wife is brilliant. And this conversation that they had, I'm telling you, I told Moali, I was like, look, y'all need to kind of can this and take this on the road, not for pay, but just as a guide for people about kind of what needs to happen, especially in the corporate space, So we got leaders, right? It's just people have to lead differently. With the advent of social media and technology and everybody, if you got a cell phone, you're a leader, because all you got to do is record yourself and let it go viral. Now the media is reporting on you, and people are following you now. You got hundreds of thousands of followers and everything, and now you are a leader. And so it's really incumbent upon us to, if you are in a place where people are following you. We have a small church, right? But in the group of people that we've been charged to lead, we have to lead and really lean in and do our part to make a difference. So
yeah, that's good.
So going off of that, and I think you made a great point in our preliminary discussion, um, because we don't have a clear voice and we are very truncated in these different pockets of great leadership or pockets of people that have the skill set to, make the things that we need to get done happen. How are we going to start, I guess, connecting those dots to kind of bridge the people that are able to organize, that do have the leadership, that have the oratorical skills, as C said, and that are clear people of influence, along with the unbridled passion that people have to kind of go out and do the work and be the foot soldiers. How do we bring those two worlds, or at least start getting them closer? Versus, again, it just kind of looks like buckshots, right? They say if you really want to affect change, you had to be like a sniper. You had to like take aim and then one shot, one kill, versus just shooting wildly into the crowd. Right now it feels like we're just and I don't want to use such a morbid display, but that's what it is. It's just kind of like you're just spraying wildly into the crowd hoping you hit something to affect change, versus bringing all of those different resources together to make one more, what to like make one blow,
Yeah.
versus five fingers have one fist.
Yeah, man, that's like the $1 million question, honestly. Because you have kind of leaders scattered, and there's not like one or two or a few leaders, like in the civil rights movement. What I saw is, that you had leaders in different cities or whatever, and I think Dr. King just kind of elevated, to that position. Ironically, he was one of the younger ones, that when he first started off, he was on the sideline, just trying to make his way. And I think God just kind of navigated. He used his gifts, and God just navigated his way to get to that point. Because we are in a different world now, because people look at leadership differently, because of all of what we just talked about, social media, technology, and all that. I don't know that I think we all want this kind of leader that we can follow, and kind of all galvanize behind. I just don't know if there's that person out there just that has that capacity to do that. I think we got a ton of people that can fill that role, right? But you can fill the role, but if ain't nobody following you, you just doing your own thing, right? I do think what we need more now is conveners, people to bring people together, not necessarily to lead, but to facilitate the conversation, right? To me, that moderator to get you to that next level, So you got all these different factions. You got, you got all kind of groups. I don't even want to start naming them because some of them get offended if I don't say their name. But you got them all that are doing very important work, right? And doing some really good work. But they're all are limited because of the capacity issues. But if you can have somebody that can be the convener, that doesn't have to be the one on the mic, that doesn't have to be the one leading the press conference, that doesn't have to be the one giving the eloquent Dr. Martin Luther King speeches, but is settled with being the convener, bringing them in the room together, and then being able to navigate them to come out with a common agenda. Yeah. Not to co-opt people's agenda. So you don't tell the NAACP, dump your agenda for the SCLC's agenda or for the Urban League's agenda. You don't tell people to throw away their agenda, but you bring them all in the room and say, okay, what is the 3 issues that we're all going to get behind, and we're going to all pour resources and people behind those 3 issues, right? And that we're gonna really push these 3 issues. We're gonna all do that. We're still gonna do our own things, because we have different missions, different visions, and all that. But we're gonna come together and we're gonna do those 3 things, and we're gonna do them hard. I think you'll start to see more of that. Dr. Larry, I don't know why I keep going back to him. Maybe because he just passed, and that's why I hate COVID. Because he couldn't have the appropriate home going that he deserved, and but he the way that I met him was through an organization that he created called the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. And we called it the People's Agenda for short. And I was invited to a meeting there. Alicia Thomas Morgan invited me there, and because we were doing some work together. So I went there. I hadn't even heard of Reverend Lowry before. I was like, who is this? Right? I didn't even know who he was. But in those meetings, we met, and I think they still do, every Tuesday afternoon around lunchtime. And what he called himself was a convener. He was the convener of that. Mm-hmm. And the concept behind it was you have the NAACPs and the Rainbow Coalition and the Urban League and I think the National Action Network and different things like that. You had the labor unions and even the political parties coming to the table to basically listen to him. So although he called himself convener, he was a leader. Let's be clear.
Right.
He was a leader that they put the mic in front of him, and rightfully so. He was a leader. But I think the concept is what is the most important thing. We need more conveners, to come to the table, to take the folk maybe even in Atlanta and connect them with the folk in LA. Because of technology, we can do that, and connect them with the folk in Minneapolis, and connect the lawyers like Moali and Ben Crump and Chris Chestnut and all these cats that we know that are certain ones of them are civil rights attorneys,
right,
and all
right.
that. I'm just naming names. You get in trouble when you start naming names, right?
Mm-hmm.
But convening all these people together and say, all right, what is our three things? Because we got to be intentional.
Right.
And the thing that is, Wally said today on this thing, he said, my question is this I think he said a moment or a movement?
Mm.
Is this a moment or a movement? And I fear y'all, and these aren't my words that I use, but I had that same question. And my biggest fear is that this is a moment.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose what we got the world's attention right now, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's
that momentum.
I think that's to your point, and I think that's a lot of our fears is that we've been here before in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. This time does seem different.
It does.
It does seem different. Like I think you've had many people chiming in. You've had many corporations chime in that you've never seen chime in before, and so I think it does seem different. But before, or often, the movement was led by the church.
Yeah.
And now the church doesn't have the stance or the place in the community that it had before. What is the church to do now? And even what is Transforming Faith doing in a time like this?
So, man, that's a great question, man. When I felt very clearly that we were supposed to start a church, I didn't have a name, didn't know where, didn't know what that looked like. What does that look like to start a church, right? I didn't know. And so I was prayerful about a name. And one thing that I wanted the name to be, I didn't want it to be like Mount Sinai, nothing against a Mount Sinai or anything like that. But the old traditional Bible name, something, church or named after a street or anything. I wanted it to be descriptive of who we are called to be, right? And so we were praying. I had a whole list of things, and the word transform kept popping up. Transform, right? And I was like, that's it. And let me tell you why that was it. Because I'm a preacher's kid, so I grew up in the church, watching the church, went to a super, super duper mega church once, we got here and all that, was very active in it. But one of my biggest criticism of the church was, especially growing up, was that some of the biggest churches in our community have some of the biggest challenges, talking about the community now, have some of the biggest challenges: high unemployment, high crime rate, high dropout rate, a lot of litter, just challenges that you see, a lot like black colleges, right? You see a lot of big churches and a lot of black colleges in the hood, and all that. And my trouble wasn't that it was I loved it being in the community, in the hood. My challenge was, and again, this is thinking back then. So I'm gonna fix it in a second. So I'm not criticizing the church now and all that, because I've grown and matured now. But my challenge was, you didn't see things getting better because the church was there.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see the unemployment rate going down. You didn't see the crime rate going down. You didn't see the graduation rate go up, right? You didn't see the tangible kind of changes that we would hope and pray that you would see with a church with so many resources and people and all that, right? And money. And but then I quickly realized that that's because, like, when I went to seminary, they didn't teach me how to transform a community.
Mm.
They didn't teach you. That's what I was called to preach. And when you called to preach, you preach, Doc.
Right, Doc.
That's how preachers talk. You preach, Doc. And even when I went to go talk to pastors to, like, show me how to be a pastor. I don't know. I went to seminary, and it prepared me for stuff. I knew how to rightly divide the word. I know how to read scripture. I knew the Greek and Hebrew and all that stuff. But it didn't teach me how to transform a community. And when I went to talk to pastors, this when it really, the light bulb went on. This is what I got, the lion's share of what I got. Preach Jesus, Doc.
Right.
I was like, I know that. What else you got?
What else you got? Yeah.
What else you got? And I realized that so many of our churches grew because we had these big personalities,
Mm-hmm.
these charismatic figures, these the people that can preach your socks off, can make you cry every time you walk in there, but they didn't know because they were never trained or developed. They didn't have the background to do that. So what I'm saying is we have to begin to train and develop our ministers in training, our young pastors differently, right? That we are equipping and empowering them to really make a fundamental difference and change in our community. God bless me, and that's why I'm saying God knows our journey. So my journey may have looked like it was doing all this. I went from business to politics to pastoring, right? Like, what all three of those have to do with each other?
Right.
Everything.
The reality is, I can see God's hand in it now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the very thing that I see are challenges in our community, I got it. I know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just need the money and the people, and that can even work itself out. You don't even have to have a whole lot of people to transform a community, man, to make a difference in our community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think we got to do with our churches. So what we're doing is, for example, I'll just kind of give you a quick structure. We're super small. We got 100 members. So, the members will come, and we got 100 members that we love to life. But the funny thing is, so I'll give you a quick example. We had this thing where we paid off the negative school lunch balances of elementary school students in DeKalb for as many as we could. And so I think one year we paid off for like maybe 14 schools. Another year we did for like 12 schools. Wow. We literally wiped out all of the negative student lunch balances for all kids, because some of their parents, they didn't qualify for the free or reduced lunch, but they still struggled, right?
Yeah.
And so we just wiped it out for everybody, whether you just forgot to pay your lunch balance or not, we wiped it out. And so when it's a certain amount, you got to go to the school board and they have to vote to accept it. And so they were giving us all these accolades. Oh, y'all are doing great and all this other stuff. And I recognized that they were talking like we were a big mega ministry. And I realized at the time, I was like, I just stopped them. I was like, wait. I want to let y'all know we got 62 members. That was at that time. And everybody was like, what? Wow. Because it's all how you prioritize your resources, how you being a steward over your money. We ain't got it right, but I feel like we have we're trying to be strategic with it. So we've created a couple of entities, right? So we have our church entity. It's a 501c3, Transforming Faith Church, but we also created another entity. It's called Transforming Community Development Corporation. That's another nonprofit 501c3 that we're going to use as the vehicle to begin to transform our community. We want to build senior housing, and we want to open up a school, and we want to do some very strategic things that will really be a benefit for the community. And then we've created a for-profit entity. Because churches can create a for-profit entity. So we're gonna do business in our county. So if the private sector didn't want to come in and create jobs, bump it. We'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
We'll create it ourselves. And so this is us being strategic. Right now we just have the structure of it together. We aren't fully activating in it because frankly, we're small. We ain't got a whole lot of money and all that, but we got the structure.
Yeah.
So when it's time to pull the trigger, man, we off and running.
Yeah, that's good.
You said something right there that, I say all the time, we have everything we need, and we do, right? Yeah. And we already know of our combined economic power. We already know our social capital if, we're able to kind of really galvanize and move forward, even in these small subsets that you're talking about. As a person that has that education and that background, because again, you have that and you were able to experience it and say, okay, I got the answer. What would you say just to the individual that has the heart but doesn't know how to equip themselves yet with the process of, starting to not only impact their immediate household, but then to your point, because of their household having these guiding principles, they're able to kind of influence their friends, their community, and then that, that trickle up effect along with your trickle down effect, they can meet in the middle.
So, so first of all, I'm gonna start with this point, then I'm gonna work back. So first point is it's a marathon, it ain't a sprint, right? So if you want to make fundamental, sustainable change, it takes time and it takes a lot of work and effort, right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So that's I want hold a pin there. There's two scriptures that I love to pull together. They're in two different books, and chapter, verse, and all that. Scripture number one is in Proverbs, and we've all seen it, whether you've heard it, whether you've gone to church or not. Where there is no vision, what, y'all?
People perish.
The people perish. Preach, Corwin. Right. Watch out. Now you read your Bible.
I don't know about this next one, though. Let's see.
So that's in Proverbs. No, you got this next one. This other one's good, too. It's easy. But you may not know how to spell the book, though. It's in Habakkuk 2 and 2. Habakkuk 2 and 2. It's in the Old Testament. It's only a few chapters. Habakkuk 2 and 2 says to write the vision and make it plain.
Make it plain.
So that he who reads it, and I always like to add, or she who reads it, can run with it, right? So number one, in Proverbs, you got to have a vision, right? Number two, Habakkuk says to write the vision. Number three to that part is kind of part two to the Habakkuk 2, and make it plain. Write the vision, make it plain. Why? Because it's a marathon, it ain't a sprint, right? Because it says, so that he who reads it can run with it. That means you may not be fully living this vision that you had out. Like, I truly believe that Transforming Faith Church is going to be bigger, badder, and deafer when I'm gone than it ever was when I'm here. But we would have built the infrastructure. We would have built the foundation. So however big and however bad we become now, just exponentially grow that when I'm gone, right? Because it ain't about me.
Right.
It's about the mission that God has called for us to. So you got to have a vision. You got to write that vision down, and you got to write it down simply. So let me tell you how that worked in my life. I had a vision to be a business owner. And so I prayed. I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to be rich. That was my young self, right? I just want to be rich. So I'm 5'0" nothing, right? 100 pounds nothing. Right, so I wasn't playing on Sundays and and all that stuff. I can't sing, so I'm not gonna be an entertainer and all that good stuff. Although, well, I'm not gonna go there. But
you think you can sing?
I think I can sing. Right?
It's a difference, though.
And
I think I can and I can't.
Voice, because I might have been like Casey and JoJo. Ooh,
Ooh, yeah.
Third off. Okay, all right. I digress.
Right.
So I prayed, and that's where the idea of a movie theater came about. Magic Johnson at the time was starting his was really expanding his movie theaters, and that was the first time I heard of an individual owning a movie theater. So the vision, be a business owner. Okay, and the next step in that vision was to start a movie theater. Never worked in a theater, didn't know how a movie theater worked. So I did everything I could day and night to learn about movie theaters. I joined an association, didn't have a movie theater. I'm sitting up in there with AMC executives and Regal Cinemas and all that. And I'm a young 20-something-year-old dude with this big wide-eyed vision, right? But I learned everything I could, about the vision. And then I sat down like Habakkuk 2 said, and I wrote it. I wrote a business plan, and I had to make it plain. So then when I was looking for somebody to help fund that vision, they could understand it, right?
Right.
So I had the vision, I wrote it, I made it plain, right? And then I had to remember, well, this is what I learned. I wasn't remember, I was learning that. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Yeah.
So that he who reads it can run with it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was able to run with it and all of that, but that was it. And we have to be able to do that as a people. We got to start having greater vision. We got to start believing that we can accomplish anything that we put our minds to, but we have to have the discipline, the intestinal fortitude, and we got to support one another. And I'm gonna quit on this question with this. We ran the theater, I think a total of close to 5 years or so. About a year or two in, we had to shut it down because we just didn't have the working capital, right? Again, young dude, took out every loan that I could. I didn't know nobody then, so I couldn't raise a whole lot of money. So we were able to pull together just enough money to open up the theater. We had so little money that after we sealed the deal, we closed on it. I took over on a Thursday. Payroll was due Monday. I didn't have $1 to make payroll just for those days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I didn't have enough money to make payroll for those days.
Wow.
So I was praying that people came and bought tickets over the weekend
right.
and did that. And thankfully we were able to make it, but it was always a struggle just because we didn't have that kind of wealth in order to run the theater. What kept us open for as long as we did, even when we were able to open back up and we stayed open for a couple of more years, what kept me open was our people, y'all. Was our people. They would come to this 25-year-old movie theater with old carpet that probably hadn't been changed since you were sitting in them seats, Corwin, in high school.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was just, but they came because they knew it was owned by this young black dude or whatever, and we made it last as long as we could. I'm looking back at that, and I know clearly it was because our people came and they supported us, right? We got to do that too, even when it ain't comfortable. I know we got more options than we ever had, but sometimes, I'm telling people, we bank with a black bank. Our church. Yeah. Now, our personal bank is one of the big banks. Don't worry about that. But we don't have nearly as much money in our personal bank
as we do in this. Yeah.
In the church bank.
Right. That's good. Right.
Yeah. So we made that was an intentional move, and we don't have all the. I don't have all the benefits and the features and everything that I got on my personal side. I'm clear on that, but I know that. But yet I'm staying there to support them so that they can continue to grow and prosper. And then when we're ready to build our church, they can give us a loan, right?
There you go. There you go.
But we ain't gonna have to get a loan. We're gonna pay for it with cash.
Straight cash, homie.
Speak it. All right, so we done talked a little bit about business. We done talked a little bit about the church and the Lord. Your other life was in politics, but so with politics, can you speak to, so in this movement, and what's been kind of what the culture has always done. I was going to say black culture, but the culture is always, we jump out to vote on a president, and that's where, but then everything else is, slow trickle. What can we do? What should we be doing now in this season and moving forward? Of course, we are voting for a president, but how should we move forward, even on, and not just on a national level, but how can we affect change even on a local level?
Man, that's a good question, man. And you know, unfortunately, it's this perpetual thing in our community where we pay attention, and it's not just us; it's the nation as well.
Right.
But we can't afford not to pay attention every year for an election. We just can't afford it, right? And so what we can do personally is, I mean, let's start with the simple stuff. You know, let's start with the simple. Let's make sure we are registered to vote.
Right.
Let's start with that, right? Let's start with that. Number two, let's make sure we are educated on who and what we're voting for. You're right. So registration, education, and then mobilization, right? And so really mobilization is just actually going out to vote, right? You can't go to vote if you're not registered. And if you go vote and you're not educated, you literally just doing a coin toss, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm preaching to the choir because I know a lot of y'all's community y'all are intentional about, you know, educating, you know, your fans, your supporters, you know, and all that. But we have to be intentional about talking to our family members who we know are not participating, who we know are not registered, who we know are not educated, and who we know are not going out to vote. We need to, you know, we got to sit down, and you may be saying, well, I don't even know how to do that. I sat in this office last week with an educated woman with letters behind her name, needed some help on who to vote for. And I try never to just tell people who to vote for. I just tell them my experience with them, right? And I guess if they trust me, they go the way that they know that and then I may tell them who I voted for if they just ask, right? But we got to educate ourselves on the issue. So let's talk about this season that we're in right now. What are some things on the political side that we can do? We got Frederick Douglass says what I believe is one of the greatest quotes of all time, y'all. He said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." He said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." And honestly, y'all, we've just not been demanding of our elected officials. Right. We've not been demanding because we don't know what they're doing. We assess how good a job they are as if they showed up to our community meeting or not. You know, or if they are doing a big family fun day like we used to do. You know what I mean? I mean, that was how people assess how well I was doing when we let their little babies get up on that horse at our family fun day or swim in the Olympic-sized swimming pool. They looked at me and said, "You're doing a good job, Lee." You know, and so we got to educate ourselves. So what are some of the issues right now? We have bad police officers, not across the board, but I'm talking about the ones who are perpetrated many of these incidents, right? Who have committed murder, who have physically abused, you know, people in their custody and all of that. And we are upset. Part of the passion and the wrath that are on the streets now is that we've seen them, you know, perpetuate this violence against people of color and then just get away scot-free too many times.
Right.
Or delay. Don't show the video when you got the video, or lie about circumstances and things that happen in the action or whatever. You know, and there's certain things that I'm like, we can do, and I'm just telling my personal opinion, and then I'll, you know, share how we can move that forward. I believe that every police officer in the nation ought to have a body camera. Every last law enforcement, not just police, but sheriff's office, deputies, anybody that's a sworn officer that has been certified should be mandated to have a body camera. Number one. Number two, they should not control when that camera turns on and turns off. They shouldn't. It should be built into the policies, and the technology that they choose ought to give them that ability that as soon as they step their behind out their car, the camera turns on, and it stays on until they get back in their car because the incident is done, right? You know, that's number two. Number three, every jurisdiction in the country, if there's a police involved shooting, I don't care if it's been caught on tape or not caught on tape, if you believe it was a good shooting or not a good shooting, every police involved shooting needs to be independently investigated. So in Georgia, you can do it through the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, GBI. And I'm giving, and those are three things that I say that every jurisdiction, and myself, and me personally, I would only vote for people that support those three things.
Right.
You know, and so you got to educate. So that has to be somebody, you got to get somebody to put those 3 points out there, right, to support that. Thankfully, in DeKalb, all three of those were done.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Part of it was our internal policy when I was there, so I don't know if it's still in place, but we were one of the first in the state to get those police body cameras, and it's expensive, so we did them in phases. By now, everybody should have one. Mm-hmm. And the second thing was we had built in our policy that when you step out the car, that happens. And then because of a horrific shooting that happened in DeKalb, one of the worst, I believe, in the nation, you know, when a white cop shot and killed a black man that was butt naked. Mm-hmm. You know, after that incident, we said, you know what, you know, all police shootings are going straight to the GBI, you know, for them to do that. So I'm just giving you some tangible things, you know, that we can do. And then you begin to ask your elected officials. And those are the three things that I'm passionate about, particularly right now.
Right.
You know, you begin to ask, where do you stand on this? All these candidates that are running in cities and counties, you should, you know, ask them, what are you, you know, this is what I'm passionate about. What is your stance on that? And if they've been in office, you research to see if they've ever had a chance to vote on anything near what your passion is, right? And see how they voted, you know, and begin to, you know, hold them accountable. Go to public hearing meetings. I used to hate those, but it's their right, you know, because basically as an elected official, you sitting there and getting cussed out and you can't say nothing. They calling you everything but a child of God, but it's their right, and I agree with it, you know, their ability to do that. So we got to engage. So that's really the education part. And then the mobilization part is voting for the people and the policy. So if there's any referendums on an election ballot, you need to, before you go vote, you need to go pull a sample ballot. Pull a sample ballot. That's for anybody watching. Go pull a sample ballot and go through all of the things. I would say start with the incumbent first, because they have a record. They have a track record. So if it's for state representative, go through and just do some Google. See if they've had any drama, you know, and, you know, see kind of, you know, it's so much information out here, but kind of try and check their voting record. Start off with something you're passionate with. If you're passionate about education, Google their name and education and see if anything pops up, you know, and then reach out to them, email them, call them, try and reach out to them and have a talk. And then you go through with the candidates and start seeing what their positions are on things, you know, so.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. That's why I took my family to, and we're going to close out after we've been on for a minute. But I took my family to DC, and like, I think people it's just stuff that doesn't register with us. Like, I didn't know you could walk into your senator's office in Washington, DC. Like, you can go find your senator and walk into his office. Yes. You know, and that's what we actually like, because we said, oh, we walk around all the buildings and all that. And then we asked, hey, can we go up in here? And the officer was like, you can go in all of these buildings you paid for. And that was like, but that's the thing. I think we don't even think to your point of not even realizing, call your senator, you know, go to the office, you know, you put them in office. You have a power that we aren't using in being able to go, you know.
And I'm glad you said that. Next time you go to DC, either one of you all, call in advance. You know, typically we know in advance that we're going. Call your senator, both senators, call your congressperson, and schedule a visit. Say, hey, I'm gonna be in town on this day. Can I get on his or her calendar? Right. That's one of the things that you could do to test if this is somebody you want to support. Now I get if because they got to go vote, they got meetings and stuff. So if they're not there, that's one thing. And even when you schedule meetings, they have last minute votes that they don't control.
Yeah.
So if they got to be, so you got to take that. But if you know that they're there and they just not meeting with you, or if they say, "What are you meeting about?" Just say, "I just want to meet my representative."
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's enough.
Right.
You shouldn't have to be invited. If you want to tell them about an issue, you can say, "Hey, I want to talk about education. You know, I want to see kind of what their position is and why." You know, you can do that. Next time you go to DC, you can do that here in Georgia as well at the state capitol. You can go up there. Now they're part-time, so it's a little bit more difficult, but you can still get their information, email them, and try and schedule a meeting. They have staff that are there full-time. Email them. Have them educate you on the issue.
Right.
Say, hey, I really believe in the public education system, but I really don't know the ins and the outs. I don't know the policy positions and all that, but I do want to be an advocate for a healthy public school system, public education system in the state of Georgia. Can you help walk with me on that? I'm telling you, that'll blow them away because they don't really get that many questions like that.
Right.
Do it. If you're watching this, do it. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Do it now.
Do it now.
Well, listen, Lee, man, I can't thank you enough for, carving this time out. I just want to kind of recap some of the things that I took away personally from our conversation. The first thing is we need to educate ourselves. So if you're watching this, the big thing that we're really walking away from this conversation is: have you done your due diligence to be educated enough to speak articulately and from a position of research and fact about the different things that you feel strongly about? So that's the main takeaway of, yes, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you just can't say, oh, I feel like this about this just because. But no, have you done the due diligence? Have you carved the time out to truly seek a deeper understanding and meaning of the issue? So that's the first thing. The second thing is investing in yourself. So when we say write the vision out and make it plain, have you invested in yourself to make sure that as you are writing the vision out, you are educated about what it's going to take to make your vision manifest, what the steps are for your vision to manifest, and the action plan for your vision to manifest. And then you can start that path. I think a lot of times we just kind of just jump out there and, put the wheels on the bus as it's riding. And then we're sorely disappointed when the vehicle falls apart. But we haven't done our due diligence again to make sure that when we put our stuff together, once it's out there, it's not about us. It's about the legacy, and the things are living way beyond us because we have done our part for the infrastructure. The last thing is, as influencers, you made a great point about convening, and I want to kind of take it from the macro level to the micro level, because on your platform you have the ability to kind of reach out to these figures, have those conversations with the Mawulis. And I see David Manuel's on here. What's up, David?
What's up,
He's
David?
running for school board. Marshall Taggart, he's heavy in the game. And we have Eddie. What's up, Eddie? Eddie, Pastor Eddie reached out. So we have these different people that might have resources to larger figures. But even on the micro level, how are you convening? How are you going to be that person to kind of get your small circles together? And as your point, even though it might be smaller in numbers, you're saying, okay, we're going to make a concerted effort to at least change this and be a benefit to this. Case in point, when I used to do my panels at Year Up, I would reach out to my village because I knew that, hey, I speak, I know a lot of speakers. Let me call my village and get these young adults better in being able to advocate for themselves, because if they can advocate for themselves, then they can teach someone else. So I really encourage the people on this call, and when you rewatch this, how are you acting as a convener and as an influencer to make sure that you're connecting the right people? So again, we can operate from a position of strength versus it just being scattered, and we all have these different agendas. And what are those three things that we're going to concentrate on and just kind of make our plan plain and work our plan to make sure that we are getting the benefit out of our plan. So that's what I took as far as the mobilization piece of it. Corwin, any other nuggets that you want to make sure that we getting to walk away with, and then Leo, have you do your closing and we'll close out.
Close like a pastor. Anyway, no, I just appreciate too just being educated on who you're voting for. Like that we would actually take time and understand, who we're voting for. Do your research before you get to the booth, because otherwise you are just guessing, and half the time you're gonna just pick the incumbent because that's who you're used to, So do your research, and then I love just the whole thing too, and understanding, like, yeah, Chris said it, but write it down. If you haven't written it down, it's just a dream. It ain't a plan, and so write it down. But no, I just appreciate you, Lee, and just sometimes I forget all the different things that you've done in life, but I think these three things, from business to politics to the church, it's Black America at its core. And like, these are the things that we need to be paying attention to. These are the things that we need to be really taking care of. So man, appreciate you, brother.
Man, appreciate y'all for having me. Absolutely, man.
So tell everybody where they can find you, brother, any social media handles or websites. So if they want to continue to follow you and get some of this wisdom, they can.
Well, I'm going to point everybody to our church. That is my heart. That is my passion. That's where God have us. Our website is www.transformingfaithchurch.com. I know it's long. It's just the name of our church, transformingfaithchurch.com. All of our social media platforms, we are at TFC for Transforming Faith, right, church, TFC DeKalb, because we're in DeKalb. So Facebook, we're TFC DeKalb. Instagram, we're TFC DeKalb. You can check us out on YouTube, our YouTube channels. We worship every Sunday online on all of those platforms. You can check us out at 10 a.m. and come join us as we're, and I'm not talking about as a member. My wife hates for me to say that. I'm talking about just in doing the work of the people. One of our sayings, one of my sayings is that those who are reactive will always serve those who are proactive. Right now it's time for us to be proactive, y'all, so we can stop doing the serving. We've been doing the serving too long because we continually react to stuff. We're having to work for people. We're having to seek assistance from others, from the government, from nonprofits in challenging time. And y'all, we have everything in our hand that we need. God has given us favor. We're a resilient people, y'all. Mm-hmm. The Middle Passage didn't stop us. Slavery didn't stop us. Jim Crow didn't stop us. This police brutality ain't gonna stop us, y'all. And we have everything that we need to win, y'all. And I just encourage you all to keep up the fight. Remember, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Man, well said, brother. Again, thank you for your time. On behalf of Corwin C. Dog Oglesby and myself, Chris Cocktails Cornell, thank you for participating in our first Holla Spotlight. Check us out every Thursday. We're going to be right here on this platform of Hallelujah Comedy Facebook Live. And then, as you said, we'll also be uploading all of these talks to our YouTube page so you can go back and revisit them. So without further ado, man, Godspeed, do not slow down. And remember, God has a sense of humor, so why don't you?
Oh.